All right, let's begin in part two here. The Ostend Manifesto, 1853. Franklin Pierce is trying to buy Cuba. Cuba, if you know, is 90 miles south of Florida. Um, what happens is he sends three diplomats to Belgium. They take a telegram over there, talk to the people in from Cuba, actually in Belgium, trying to get them to sell it, and it falls through. Okay. But the message got leaked to the press that he was trying to buy Cuba. Well, Cuba is south of the Ohio River. So if it would have become a state, it would have got added as a slave state. People think that Franklin Pierce is trying to add a slave state by buying the thing. It loses him the next election because so many people up north don't want to see him get elected because they think he's trying to buy a state for the South. So you can see at this point in 1853, it is just a mess where everybody is all these little straws added on this camel's back. It's about to break. People are totally focused on free state, slave state. So we get to 1854 and we have the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Stephen Douglas is wanting a railroad to run all the way to California. And if you're wanting a railroad to run there, it's going to have to go through all those states out there. And that's going to bring people out there, which is going to open states out there. To do this, he decides he's going to open up two territories to becoming states. One is Kansas and the other is Nebraska. This is going to lead to bleeding Kansas and everything like this. To be able to do this, he has to nullify the Compromise of 1850. Just 4 years earlier, when they say, hey, you know what? You can't have slave states over there. He decides to totally just tear it down and allow slavery. So he decides to put it up for popular sovereignty. Popular sovereignty means the people decide. So when he says the people in Kansas will decide if they're going to like slavery and the people in Nebraska will decide if they're going to like slavery, Nebraska is even above Kansas. You're now dealing with a state that was a free state that you're giving the option to slavery. And with Kansas, you're looking at a state that should be free and you're giving it the option. This is going to cause some severe problems. For one thing, the plains, Kansas and Nebraska, would have been a slavery gold mine during this time because it is strictly for agriculture. And in this day and age, without the tractors and the things like that, humans were your source of labor. And so if you could go out to Kansas and plant massive fields of wheat and have slaves bring it in, cuts the cost, and then they would make a lot more money. So people were looking at Kansas and Nebraska as a gold mine. Because if you could get slavery established there, it is a straight agriculture state that you would be dealing with. So when all these states get to decide popular sovereignty, all right? And here you go. You've got showing the unorganized territory, the Kansas territory, and what was the Nebraska territory at that time. Your bottom right shows you a picture of Stephen Douglas. That will be the same man from the Lincoln-Douglas debates that we'll talk about. So what happens is when Kansas is going to be able to decide for itself, you are going to immediately have people that have an agenda about slavery moving to that state. So the moment they announce that you're going to let Kansas decide, you have thousands of people up north moving to Kansas so that they can vote and stop slavery. When you all of a sudden have thousands of people that are so anti-slavery moving into Kansas, down south, they realize they have to get as many people for slavery into that state. Southern towns actually go around and start taking up collections, people donating money. And then what they would do is they would look at some of the younger men and say, listen, if you would like to go live over in Kansas, we'll give you X number of dollars to go live there. And when it's time to vote, if you will vote for it to be slavery. So basically they were being paid to go there and vote. The problem being that you're hiring all these young guys who have nothing to lose at that point, and young men are not known for being level-headed. of course, old men or young, just men, but not known for making the most rational decisions. They go out there and they are now enwrapped in, if you get to vote for slavery and as many people as you kill that were going to vote against it, it's that many more votes for you. So you get all these people showing up that are ready to fight to stop slavery or fight to have slavery. Back north, when they find out that they are taking up collections to send people, the North does the same thing. They take up collections and buy guns and send to the people that are already moved out there. They're abolitionists, and they're arming the people that are against slavery so that when they're attacked, there will be a fight. Yeah, I mean, and then the people that are for the South, when you're in a state and you see wagon loads of guns showing up and be giving to the people that you don't like, the tension is about to boil over more so than you could ever imagine. So you've got people from the South showing up, people from the North showing up, and at this time, even though you're a territory, you're not a state yet, you still have to have a state government. So they set up a state government. Didn't work. People that were abolitionists wanted an abolitionist government. People that were pro-slavery wanted a pro-slavery government. So the abolitionists break off and form their own government. The South breaks off and forms their own government. So you have the state's government and an abolitionist and a slavery all in the same state. All of them are electing officials. All of them are electing sheriffs. So now in one situation, you could have something happen and 3 different sheriffs show up, and all of them saying the exact opposite of what the other is saying. You are going to have so much major problems by them having these forms of governments and everything like that. If you went out and killed an abolitionist, well, one government's going to say you deserve to die. One says they'll pardon you. And so it depends on which government you go to talk about it. It gets so out of hand at this point that you're going to have people like John Brown doing some things. And this is a picture right here. It's a famous illustration of John Brown. No, he is not 12 foot tall, but it's a famous illustration. It's showing him tall in other people's minds. He was a big, tall guy, but not that tall. So what happens is these border ruffians start to show up in Kansas. The border ruffians were people that lived in Missouri, and they would literally come across the line, shoot people, attack people, kill people they didn't like, and then go back across the border. And all of a sudden you're free again because you're back in your own state. They are having fights break out every day with people from Missouri, this pro-slave state, coming into Kansas, killing people, and then going back. You have things like them burning hotels, burning homes. They looted towns. They would go in and loot an entire town and burn an entire town because whole towns would be abolitionists, and then you have other whole towns that were pro-slavery. You even have what happens with John Brown. John Brown and he has sons, and they show up in Powhatan, Kansas. They go into houses, 5 different houses, and they drag the people that are pro-slavery out into the street. Now, if you're wanting to kill somebody, you go in the house and you kill them, they die. But if you want everybody to see it and everybody to know what's going on, you drag them out into the street. John Brown and then his sons would go into a house, drag the slave owner out into the street where everybody can see it, and they would take out swords and hack the person into small little pieces. You are trying to strike fear and intimidation into people's hearts and everything like that. And so John Brown goes inside, they hack these people's hearts. He has to now flee to the east because so many people are looking to kill him for what he did and everything. He is going to play into this later. That is the same John Brown that is going to be at the attack on the fort in just a minute. You have areas to where there was these abolitionist towns and they had printing presses. And one like Lawrence, Kansas, they rode into Lawrence, Kansas and took the newspaper press and busted it up, threw it into the river, and people up north gathered up money and sent them another printing press so they could go right back to printing abolitionist newspapers. You have one state that is literally fighting and clawing each other, and the rest of the states that are sending money to aid this so that the fight can keep going. It is just out of control. And that is where in 1856 now, Charles Sumner of Massachusetts gets up and he gives a speech from the floor of the Senate and everything. And he talks on there about the speech is called Crimes Against Kansas. And his speech is so well received because he realized his point is we're making crimes in Kansas. We are not aiding this. We are making this worse the way things are going. And his speech actually, because it's done there at, they're writing it down what he's saying, and it gets published in the newspaper the next day. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow says it's the most noble speech ever given. It is causing just people all across the North to talk about that we're committing crimes in Kansas by even having this open for debate. This is angering the South. And what happens is you have him give the speech, there's a day off, and then the next day he's back at Congress there. And what happens as he is on the floor, standing there by his little desk and everything, a man named Preston Brooks from South Carolina, he comes in to, and he's walking with a metal-tipped cane. This is not uncommon in this day and age. A lot of people had canes, but the man did this on purpose. He comes in with a metal-tipped cane, walks up behind Charles Sumner, and hits him in the head, trying to kill him. He is going to hit this man so hard with a metal-tipped cane. He is going to hit him so many times, he actually breaks the cane. He is literally trying to kill him on the floor of the U.S. Congress. America has literally imploded and gone insane over this. Where we should have our most common sense, where we should have our most wits about us, we're fighting each other on the floor. How bad did he beat this guy? It is going to take 3 years for Charles Sumner to recover before he can walk and talk again. He got laid down to the skull is what happened with this. On the floor, once again, is anybody catching this? On the floor of Congress and everything like that. Now, this is the point in America's history that you should see the South and the North go, well, we've went too far. Let's try and rein it back in. No, what happens, Preston Brooks gets thrown in jail for attempted murder. And every day at the jail, hundreds of canes are being sent to the jail with notes, kill another one, try and kill somebody from the North. Here's another cane to kill somebody with. The South is egging it on. They're wanting to see him try and kill these other people in Congress and everything like that. It is just, Kansas has imploded so far, it is completely out of control. There you go. You've got a picture of Preston Brooks and Charles Sumner right there. Takes him 3 years to heal. All right. There is a political cartoon at that time and you can see it's a pretty gruesome attack. And you can tell whether they're from the North or the South. If you look in the back, some are laughing, some are scowling, because that's what it was like. Now it comes to 1857. Once again, these are the little things that are bringing us to the brink. We have what's called the Dred Scott decision. Dred Scott was a slave. He lived down south with his owner, but Dred Scott and his owner were tight. They loved each other. And Dred Scott and his owner eventually moved all the way up to Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a free state. His owner looks at Dred Scott and actually gives him the option. He says, listen, you can stay with me or you can go free. Dred Scott and him were so tight. Dred Scott says, man, I'm going to stay with you. You're getting older. Someone needs to take care of you. And so Dred Scott stays with his owner all the way up until when the owner dies. And at that point, Dred Scott felt like he's done what's right. But his owner has a son who lives down south. And when the dad dies, he wants all of his stuff. And he asked for Dred Scott as his slave to come there. And Dred Scott is like, no, man, I could have been free up here. I just stayed with the guy to be with him. I'm sorry. I'm in a free state. I've got this right. So he sues for his freedom. It goes all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has 9 judges. At this time, there were 5 judges from the South, 4 judges from the North. Roger Taney is going to be the judge in charge. He is a South Carolina judge, and he is the one who delivers the verdict. This verdict is going to cause the war to get so close because of what Roger Taney says right here. There is, right there, you see Dred Scott on your right, and on the left is Roger Taney. Here's the Supreme Court decision, what Roger Taney and them decide. First off, can he sue? Is he allowed to sue for his freedom? And Roger Taney says, first off, no, he can't sue. He's an African American, and they're not citizens. He puts it right out there and says, no, they're not citizens. He even goes so far to say even the free African Americans are not citizens. When he says this, he is angering a lot of people up north, especially the free slaves up north, the ones that have their freedom and everything. He's saying there's nothing you can do because of your color that you can ever be a free person. This is just flies in the face of all humanity. People are getting mad about this, but it's his next part of the thing that makes everybody mad. The question was, can he sue? He says no. And then question 2, does his time in Wisconsin make him a free man? Roger Taney's response is, no, he's not a person, he's property. And when Roger Taney says that, you just lowered every African American in our United States to delegate them as property and not a person. You cannot own someone else. Okay, you can mistreat them, you can do it, but you cannot own them. And when he says this, the North loses their ever-loving mind. At this point, they don't want it fixed. They want war. If you are going to literally look at other people and say, your property, it's time for war. It is literally time for war. And there is a picture of Roger Taney's grave. It is constantly disgraced. Constantly disgraced. And if you look at Dred Scott's tombstone right there, you can see pennies laid all over it. Why pennies? Anybody got a guess? Yes, you there in the back with your hand up. No, you didn't get it right. Nope, you in the back. Okay, wake that kid up over there. You in the back? Okay, fine, I'll just tell you. All right, it's because it's got Abraham Lincoln's picture on it. Oh, did you want to answer? What do you have, Miss Peach? It's Abe Lincoln. So their tombstones both have things done to them all the time just because it goes back to this. And I'll be honest, if I was near Roger Taney's grave, I probably would do something too. So that leads us to the Lincoln-Douglas debates in 1858. This is going to do a lot for America. Probably going to be considered one of Lincoln's roughest times, but it has a purpose. The Republican Party is formed during this coming election. And the whole point of the Republican Party was to stop the spread of slavery. You had originally the Democratic Republicans, then Andrew Jackson starts the Democrats, and Abraham Lincoln's party starts the Republican Party. The Andrew Jackson Democrats and the Lincoln Republicans are the same two parties we have to this day. So in 1858, Lincoln is running for Senate in Illinois. And he is running against Stephen Douglas. Stephen Douglas is the guy who started all this bleeding Kansas stuff. And Lincoln runs, and during his Senate nomination is when he gives a speech. He says, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." He quotes the Bible in several places in this thing and makes it not a question of should we do this, makes it a question of does God agree with slavery or not? And in this day and age, as you understand America, people held to the religious beliefs and everything. And when all of a sudden you make it not is slavery right or wrong, but is what you're doing approved by God or disapproved by God, people got to question what they're doing. And Lincoln's speech makes him famous. His House Divided speech catapults him to where everybody in America knows his name. The part that is crazy about this and everything is Lincoln loses the debate. And here's the thing. Y'all know from government, he's running for Senate. Senate is a 6-year commitment. This is 1858. Lincoln's going to get elected in 1860. If he would have won that, would we have had Lincoln for the Civil War? No. He would have just been a senator. Sometimes something you need to remember, sometimes what you view as a failure, you may later realize you were setting yourself up for the next thing. Because it's not if you fall, it's how you get back up. And 2 years later, Abraham Lincoln is going to get back up and not just run for Senate this time. He's going to be picked to run for president 2 years later. So if he would have won this, we never would have had Abraham Lincoln. So what he looks as one of his biggest failures, we look back and realize that's one of his greatest strengths at this point. So there is a painting right there from Mrs. Peak that helps us out, putting in a picture of the Lincoln-Douglas debates. And you can see Abraham Lincoln was a tall, tall man. Now, 1859, we are at the point of about to start the war. The last big straw that breaks the camel's back goes back to John Brown. Remember John Brown from Bleeding, Kansas? Hacked up 5 people in the streets so that everybody could watch what went down. John Brown has now moved up to New York. He wants to create a slave rebellion that would end slavery. So he first starts making pikes. Him and his 5 sons, they begin to make pikes. Pikes is a big long stick with a sharp point. This gives them spears to be able to attack people with. But here's the thing. If you got a spear, yeah, that's okay. If you got a gun, you definitely could attack the people in the South. So John Brown wants to arm all the slaves down South and then let them free themselves. So his goal is to get wagon loads of these pikes, wagon loads of guns, go down South and distribute them and let the slaves free themselves. Problem being, he's got pikes, you got wood, he doesn't have guns. Where could you get a lot of guns in this day and age? How about the military? They have a thing called an armory full of guns. And this is where the good thinking stops for John Brown. John Brown and his sons get together, a group of people, and they decide they're going to go down to Harper's Ferry. It's in West Virginia today, which was Virginia at that time, because West Virginia will split off once the war starts. It will leave Virginia. But he goes to Harper's Ferry, Virginia to see this armory, attack it, and get some weapons and everything. There is a picture of John Brown. There is a picture of them surrounding the armory. So you kind of get an idea how this is already headed. What happens is John Brown, him and his buddies his sons are going to sneak in to the armory at night, take a bunch of the guns, and leave. So they want stealth. So they sneak quietly in. They get to the bridge that is going to take them across to where the armory is at. Now, his whole goal is to free the slaves, right? Well, as he's going across the bridge at the other end, somebody's like, hey, what are y'all doing? It's the middle of the night. And at this point, you've got several options. So you're trying to sneak in, and they just saw you. Best option, option A, turn around, leave, come back another night when you're not seen. You could be able to break in, get the guns, get out. He doesn't take option A. Option B, go down, talk to the guy, see what's going on, see if he's a soldier, see what's, just calm down the situation. He does not take option B. Option C, just shoot at whoever is standing down there and kill them. And that would be what he does. When you're trying to sneak onto an army base, shooting a gun before you get there, probably not the best idea. They do shoot the guy standing at the end of the bridge, and he does die. Here's the first of many problems that happens with this. John Brown is trying to free the slaves. The one person he kills in this situation, at the other end of the bridge, the guy who said, hey, what's going on? It was a free slave. So you're there to free the slaves, and the only person that you're going to kill is a freed slave. So not exactly working in the direction that you're aiming for. Him and his sons, they hear this, they shoot the guy, and now they can either run and come back another day or try and run and get into the armory and take all the guns you can and leave. He takes option B. And so once they shoot the gun, they run into the military armory and they start grabbing the guns. Problem being, at an armory, you have army men. Army men, when they hear a gun go off in the middle of the night, aren't going to roll over and wonder what happened. They're going to get up and come find what happened. And that's exactly what happens. He opens the armory door to step out, and as you saw from the picture, it is completely surrounded. They begin to pummel that armory building, shooting into it left and right. They're actually shooting cannons full of grape shot into it. Let's just say John Brown and his sons look more like Swiss cheese than people by the time that it was over. They go in there. A lot of people are hurt and dying, but John Brown is shot up, but he is not dead. So when they take John Brown and they capture him, John Brown, even though he's as guilty as can be, they caught you in, not just in at the base, in the armory with guns. You're so caught. He can just go to jail and go and be done. He wants a court case. Why does he want a court case? Because he gets to testify in that court case. He is so shot up, they actually have to carry him in on a stretcher every day. And he lays on the stretcher on his side, lifts up a little bit, and begins to give speeches about how slavery is the wrong thing in America. And if slavery's not stopped, and he's giving these fiery speeches every day that are being recorded and put into the newspaper, and everybody's reading it. And everybody realizes, oh my goodness, this has got to stop. John Brown trying to set the slaves free is going to help it, not by his actions, but by his words. His words from that stretcher are going to ignite passions in America so much that it's going to be. In fact, one of the songs of the North, and if you click right there, Miss Peak has added it, or it's on YouTube, you can hear the song John Brown's Body becomes a popular song, almost a fight song for the North during this time. This is now out of control, and it leads us to the election of 1860. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln runs for president. Well, there are other people running. Down south, you've got all up north is all Republicans. Down south is all the Democrats. Well, the Democratic Party actually runs two different candidates. They pick Stephen Douglas from the fiery speeches, even though he's from Illinois, and John Breckinridge. Both these people are going to be competing for the Democratic votes. All the Republican votes are going to Abraham Lincoln, but you've split the number of votes for the Democrats in half. Well, what happens in Tennessee is there a man named John Bell. If you want to know stuff about the Bell Witch or anything, it's quite an interesting history. Go check it out. It's about John Bell's family. But John Bell decides to run for a Democratic Party in Tennessee. Now you have 3 Democrats running and 1 Republican. Even if the votes were 50-50, you've divided the Democrat votes into 3, and all the Republicans get 1. The Republicans are going to win the election regardless. There is no way you can stop them. Oh, they tried. They tried. In fact, 10 of the 13 states on the ballot for president would not even list Abraham Lincoln as an option. You had to choose a Democrat in 10 of the 13 states down south. If that was to happen in today's elections where they didn't list one of the candidates on 10 states, oh my word, would it be all over the... People were so divided at this time, it didn't matter. They weren't going to put him on the ballot regardless. Well, what happens is, because of all these breakoffs in the Democratic Party, Abraham Lincoln is elected president. That happens in November, and so December 20th, you have 1860, South Carolina secedes. February of 1861, they start the Confederate States of America. They have become their own country. And so then you have to go to this one little place down in South Carolina, all right? Let me finish clicking through these. I get to talking and not clicking. There you can see where the states divided up and everything like that. South Carolina secedes, 6 states follows. Like I said, February of 1861, the Confederate States is formed. There you go. There's the Confederate battle flag. I love that you did that. That is so cool, Pete. You got the Confederate battle flags and everything like that. And like I say, most people think that when you see the Confederate flag, that's just the stars and bars, that is the flag. Actually, if you look at the top 3 flags, those are the Confederate flags. The one that everybody calls the rebel flag is actually the Army of Northern Virginia's flag, which was General Lee's army. So, next slide. What happens then is once the South secedes, there is a place called Fort Sumter, which is in South Carolina. It is a fort that is on the coast of South Carolina to defend against nations attacking us. So, yes, they have cannons, but the majority of the cannons are facing out to sea so that when people come to the United States, we can defend ourselves. Problem being, you've got all these northern soldiers out there because they're the U.S. Army, and now South Carolina has broke away. They are now the enemy, and they are behind you, and all your cannons are facing out front. And so what the South does is then April 12th, 1861, they begin shelling the fort, and they are just going to pound it and pound it and pound it and pound it. It was a 3-story structure. When they leave, it is going to be a 1-story structure. It is just going to be pounded and pounded. 33 hours straight. It is just cannonballs, bam, 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 bam. And at this point, the guys on Fort Sumter realize they can stay here and just die, or they can get in rowboats and head out to sea and try and head row to the north. And again, they don't realize Abraham Lincoln has realized this is going to be a problem, has already sent reinforcements and supplies. These guys, after 33 hours, leave, and they will actually row past the boats that are headed to help them. If they would have hung on just a few more hours, there actually could have been a different beginning to the Civil War and everything. But those guys leave. By the time the other boat's there, the people from Charleston have rowed out and taken over Fort Sumter, and now the boats will be coming back facing cannons of the South. This is the final straw. This is it. You are now at the Civil War, because once you have fired at the United States, it's no longer a talk about slavery. It is a debate about war. It is actions now. It is no longer a debate. So this starts the Civil War. There is a drawing of Fort Sumter. You need to look up real pictures of Fort Sumter today so you can see the difference in this drawing right here and in the actual photos. So we will start then again next time, chapter 18, all about the Civil War.